All great boxers know how to break the rules, and you should too, but not like this.
That's f***ing illegal.
I'm not talking about breaking the rules of the contest, although these can certainly be bent from time to time. I'm talking about breaking some of the textbook boxing rules you might have heard from well-meaning coaches and fellow fighters, such as the footwork rule, the recovery rule, the Southpaw rule, and the head positioning rule. To beginners, these are the immutable laws of the sweet science, but as you get better, these rules change. Absolute rules are necessary for beginners, but they're limiting, even harmful for intermediate and advanced fighters who need to start seeing the big picture and developing new leads, looks, and traps. Let's dive right in. Number 1, the footwork rule. When advancing, always step your front foot first.
Any direction you move, that foot will be the one that leads first.
So whether you're moving forwards, backwards, side to side, you always want to lead with that foot. So if I'm moving forwards, front foot.
Forward, my front foot comes, and then my back foot follows, okay? So it's going to be step and step.
When I'm going forward, my front foot has to move, then my back.
This is one of the first things beginners will learn when they step in the gym, and it's a rule advanced fighters follow most of the time. Why is this taught? Stepping in this way lengthens your stance, giving you a strong base and forward lunging attack options, and it's the fastest way to advance from a stationary position. It also emphasizes the role of the push foot for efficient steps and weight shifts, which underpins a lot of footwork and punch techniques we'll come across later on. The alternative, stepping with the back foot first, can get you in all sorts of trouble. If you're doing it like this, or you're doing it habitually, you need to stop. However, there is a right way to step with the back foot first. Done deliberately, sparingly, and in the way I'm about to show you, stepping with the back foot first can take your game to another level, helping you hit harder and cover more ground on the attack. So how do you do it correctly? Definitely not like this. We do not want a big step forward. It should be very small, almost imperceptible, just an inch or 3, bringing your foot slightly up and in, towards your hip and your center line, making sure to leave enough space between the legs to stay balanced and agile at all times. When you step the back foot up like this, you prime your push foot, adding distance and drive to your jabs, hooks, quick lead crosses, and long steps inside. Done right, it is a safe and subtle way to set up an advance, giving you more reach and power on your follow-up techniques without bringing your head or body forward until you're ready to commit. It's a bit of a distance deception thing. You sneak into range without any apparent advance. As long as you keep the step small, it is a very low commitment move. You don't compromise your stance or take any techniques offline, and it's easy to bail out from here if things start looking dicey.
Dicey.
So again, there is a right and wrong way to do this, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it to everyone in every situation. If you're using a shorter, upright stance with the feet quite close already, you don't want to narrow it even more. Your push foot is already almost under you, so there's not much to gain. But if you like fighting out of a lower, longer stance, then stepping the back foot first makes perfect sense. It's an easy way to switch between short and long stances without bringing the head or lead foot up. But even if you do this perfectly and in the right circumstances, you shouldn't overdo it. This is something we want to do deliberately and sparingly as a way to vary our entries, chase down fleeing opponents, and set up for a long step inside. The back foot step should be something we choose to do as a strategy, not something we're forced to do out of habit. Make sure you fully understand the risks and rewards and master the basics before you break the rules. In other words, if you haven't drilled the basic front foot first step to the point where you can't do it wrong, you're not ready for this advanced alternative. Number 2, the recovery rule. It goes something like this. After every punch, bring your hand and body back to base as fast as you can. The punch doesn't end at impact, it ends back at guard.
The urgency on your offense is just as urgent as you get back here. After my hook, I'm retracting that back. After my body shot, I'm retracting that back, right? In combination, I'm returning this back. You gotta urgently come back to your base.
You deliver, you drag it back. Think of the fastest route back. Here, back. Same with the hook. Here, back right away.
Obviously, there are good reasons for this rule. Bringing your hand and body back as fast as possible loads that side to punch again, and it closes any holes the punch left in your defense. But while hand discipline is important, there's so much more to boxing than punching and closing the guard. And you don't always have to return to guard before you go to one of these other follow-up options. Sometimes it's better to end the punch out at the point of impact, not back at the guard. Then transition immediately into your follow-up technique of choice, rather than adding an extra beat of recovery in between. This is usually the case if your follow-up technique works off your punch's end mechanics. For example, suppose I want to transition off a punch into a hand trap, posture break, blind, frame, post, or other long guard technique or traffic position. In this situation, why would I bring my hand and body back after my punch lands? Why would I add more travel time and pull my hand away from its intended target? My hand is already where it needs to be, so as soon as my punch lands, I go to work. Whether that means pinning the glove, pushing the head down, blocking the eyes, framing, posting, grabbing a handle, or taking some long guard position. In these situations, moving back to guard first is a waste of time and energy. It makes more sense to break the recovery rule. Transitioning straight from punches to hands-out disruptions and defenses in this way is pretty advanced, but it's a must for properly countering head movement, controlling opponents, and putting long guard tools to work.
He's not exactly known for abiding by the Marcus of Queensberry rules at all times. With something known as sticky punches, loves to use his forearms, his elbows.
He better be able to yard against the rope, and he doesn't have to look for him. He knows where he's at, and yard can't escape.
Alternatively, there are some situations where you recover the hand, but not the body. In other words, you'll bring your hand back to guard, but you won't rotate the hips and shoulders back to their start position. Again, this will be the case anytime your follow-up technique of choice flows naturally from the punch's end position. For example, let's say I want to slip or roll out to my right side after throwing my cross. Does it make sense to punch, then rotate my body all the way back to the start position, and then roll out from there? No, because you can roll or slip to the right quite naturally off of that cross's end position. When you transition right off the point of impact in this way, you recover your body and guard and stance in the same amount of time, but you do so while taking a new position. This is safer and more efficient than trying to recover on the attack line where your opponent can find you. The same is true if you plan to pivot out. When you throw the cross, the point of impact puts you in perfect position for the outside pivot. So why waste time recovering on the attack line? You don't. You pivot right off the point of impact and recover your stance on the way to that new position. In some cases, you may even be able to ride the rotation of your punch and basically blend two techniques in one. For example, if you plan to pivot inside or step around to your right after you throw the cross, you can ride the rotation of your hips and shoulders, letting your body swing you around while you step around with the right foot. In this way, you're blending the mechanics of the cross and the inside pivot. And there's no recovery in between. There's really no space in between at all. You're doing both at once. We often tell beginners not to lift their back foot on the cross, but that's basically what's happening here. Though we are breaking the rules, these advanced follow-up techniques are quite safe, since you can still rip the backhand back to guard for coverage, and your opponent has a much harder time returning fire since you're moving offline with the punch. You're really only at risk of front-end counters. If they try to get you on the back end, you're already gone. With all that said, is the recovery rule worth following? Should we bother developing our hand discipline? The answer to both questions is yes. If you're a beginner, you should absolutely abide by the recovery rule until punch recovery is automatic. The very idea of follow-ups and exit plans might be overwhelming at this point, so narrow your scope, keep practicing, and develop that hand discipline. But as you advance, you should only really find yourself relying on this rule if you attack without an exit or follow-up disruption prepared. So develop your hand discipline for damage control, but don't feel like you have to bring every punch back to its starting point as a rule. Get used to ending your punches at the point of impact, then transitioning immediately into new positions or disruptive defenses that stop opponents from punching back. Number 3, the Southpaw rule. It goes something like this. Always fight with your lead foot on the outside of your opponents in opposite stance matchups.
Right, we all know that the lead foot beats the lead foot when you're boxing the opposite stance.
You want to keep outside to your left, outside the lead right foot of the Southpaw.
If I'm in the ring with the Southpaw, he's got his foot on the outside. He's got control of the ring. I can't really throw many punches when he's got his foot on the outside.
Okay.
We're told to keep the lead foot on the outside against opposite stance opponents, primarily because it keeps their head in line with our cross. It also makes it more comfortable to throw the hook and pivot out, and it also moves your head out to the dead side, outside their jab line and around the corner from the cross anytime you throw your power hand. Clearly, the outside foot position has a lot of benefits, and you should fight for it, but not all the time. Like anything in boxing, it has its drawbacks, and the inside foot position isn't nearly as bad as some people make it out to be.
I can't really throw many punches when he's got his foot on the outside.
This is utter nonsense. The inside foot position has a lot to offer, and since your opposite stance opponents will constantly be trying to put you there, it's nice to know how to use it. For starters, similar to how the outside foot position improves the cross, the inside foot position improves your jab, putting the opponent's head on the attack line and setting your hand, hip, and shoulder inside theirs. From here, your jab goes straight down the pipe on the inside track, while theirs must travel diagonally and cross the line of your shoulder. They say the jab is the most important punch in boxing, so why rob yourself of a foot position that makes it better? You can get the best of both worlds by doubling up on the jab, shooting the first from the inside foot position, then using the second to step outside and set up your big power shot. If you keep the foot inside though, you get some other benefits. First, your inside pivot comes back online, giving you many more ways to close the distance, get offline, and set up big hooks from weird angles. If you tried this with the outside foot position, your feet would get tangled up. You're also free to move to your power side, and theirs, for traps, punches, exits, and entries. If you were to follow the outside foot position only rule, you'd never be able to slip, roll, slide, punch, or step shuffle to your power side without tripping over the opponent's lead foot. We're breaking another rule here, I guess, since we're usually told to move away from the opponent's power hand at all times, but the reality is that you're safe to do so at the right distance or with the right distractions. And even up close, it can be useful to draw and counter power shots you're ready to defend. Of course, you need to watch out for their power hand, especially while moving in that direction and risking a collision punch, but you should already know how to defend, evade, and disrupt those punches anyway. And if you can trick your opponent into throwing those punches when you want, simply by moving into them, well, that's a tool you should have in the arsenal. Anyway, getting back on topic, as we mentioned earlier, the inside foot position will also put your lead hip and shoulder inside the opponent's. And this is not only great for beating them to the punch with a jab, it's naturally great for inside fighting, helping you brace, lift, shove, and steer opponents up close. You give up your exits to the outside, but you gain a whole lot of strength and control on the inside. Furthermore, this idea that you can't throw any punches with your foot inside is totally overstated. While some punches might not be optimal from here, as you lose those very handy built-in defenses for the power hand, you can still punch, so why not develop these skills? You won't always win the fight for the outside foot position, and you need to be able to punch no matter where the fight takes you. To sum it up, no, you shouldn't always keep your lead foot on the outside in opposite stance matchups. Both foot positions have pros and cons. If you're looking to jab, pivot in, step to your power side, or bulldoze your opponents up close, you probably want the inside foot position, and that means breaking the Southpaw footwork rule. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you can step directly onto the foot. This is another alternative to the outside foot position with its own unique risks and rewards. From here, all of your punches are available, and you can move in any direction without tripping, while the opponent's movement and mechanics are compromised. And their foot probably hurts a bit too. It's considered to be kind of a dirty trick, but I'm not even sure this is a foul. I couldn't find it in pro or amateur rules. Still, some refs will call you on it, so if you're going to use it, be subtle.
Stay off his foot.
He stepped on his foot, but he didn't throw a punch.
We're going to use that trick. Throw the punch and get him down. Make it count.
Finally, number 4, the head positioning rule. It goes something like this. Generally speaking, you want to fight with your head over the back knee.
Bend to your right, put your head just over your right knee.
You never want to bring your head forward. If you think, I've got this line here, we've actually got a line there, I never want to bring my head in front of the line, so I'm keeping my head behind the line, keeping my feet underneath us.
Keeping the head back makes a lot of sense. Your power hand is loaded, your push foot is primed, and your lead foot is lighter and ready to step. You have excellent balance, vision, and posture from here. Most importantly, your head is way back behind multiple lines of defense, so you've got time to read and react to punches. This is by far the best default boxing position, but it's not the only position you need to know, and there are plenty of good reasons to bring your head forward, towards the front knee. The most obvious reason is to load heavy punches and short body shots with a lead hand, in which case this will look more like a rotation-heavy slip to the lead knee, so that you're loaded for a big twist and weight shift back the other way. If you're not already familiar with all the different punches, exits, and head movements available from this position, you're probably not ready for the concepts in this video. No shame in that, but it's time to narrow your scope and focus on the basics.
If they're taught to fight this way in the beginning, they limit their arsenal of punches about 50%.
To those intermediate and advanced people still watching, you can also bring the head forward to set up traps and counter.
It's like he's inviting Trout to take some shots at him, looking to counter him.
Think of Mayweather's pole counter. He tilts his head forward, giving the opponent a target way up front, and giving himself extra room to pull back. Since the punch is aimed further up, where his head is presented, Floyd won't have to pull back nearly as far as he would if he started in a more traditional position, so he can stay balanced and counter fast. If you want to make the trap a little less obvious, you can lean forward with your guard up, or while throwing a light, lazy jab to invite counterpunches, instead of just brazenly offering your head up on a platter. If your opponent doesn't bite, you have punch options from here. You can rip your head back into powerful check hooks, leaping hooks, and uppercuts, or you can keep your body weight forward to sting them with quick jabs and lead crosses. These won't have full rotational power, but you can still stab with your head and body mass behind the shot. You will occasionally want to bring your head forward to fight on the inside as well. You don't always want to do this, especially if you're worried about uppercuts, but you can use your head to control space, posture, and hip distance, and having your body forward is also how you get the most power on hard posts and shoves. If you want to learn more about fighting inside with your head forward at a dominant angle, check out this video. To sum this point up, keeping the head over the back knee is a good general guideline. I teach it to everyone, but there are good reasons to break this rule once you advance. Head over back knee can be considered a default or general fighting position, whereas head over front knee is a specialized position for baiting, posting, inside fighting, changing looks, and mixing up your leads. To be perfectly clear, the trainers I clipped here are all legit, and the rules they're sharing are all useful, especially for beginners who need to narrow the scope and build muscle memory. But these rules are not absolutes. You need to understand that almost anything can work in the right context, and the rules change as you advance. Modeling your boxing style on basic beginner rules limits you to a basic beginner style. Of course, you have to master the basics before you break the rules. That's non-negotiable. But once you've got your fundamentals figured out, I encourage you to stop thinking about different techniques and positions in terms of right and wrong. Instead, think in terms of pros and cons, or risks and rewards. Is leaning the head forward wrong? It certainly comes with some risks and drawbacks, but let's not ignore how much it helps you set up pull counters and control space on the inside. The same goes for every rule we broke today. Both right and wrong ways have pros and cons, risk and reward, threats and opportunities. And this list is only the beginning. If you'd like to see some more examples of boxing rules worth breaking, let me know. Until next time, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll be down in the comments section to answer any questions.
That was cool.